Hello and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing super well. I was not planning on filming today as I have some plant stuff to get caught up on, but I actually thought it would be a really good idea to film this, and somebody on my Patreon also said that they thought this would be a good idea, and that is to kind of go through my process of how I'm refreshing my collection. So I think this deserves a little bit of a background as to what kind of my habits are when it comes to this, and how I've come to these conclusions of things that I need to do and how I'm actually approaching this issue. I do feel that it probably is quite a widespread thing that people have problems with. When you grow a collection very fast, or you have just quite a big collection, whether it's grown fast or not, it can be quite difficult to get rid of plants sometimes and kind of refresh your collection, especially if those plants are doing well. And this is where I've found a lot of my issues have come from. So while I've always kind of cared for a couple of plants throughout my lifetime, I massively got into the hobby in 2020, like many other people in the lockdown, as a distraction, and my collection grew quite fast. So I had a very steep learning curve, and with that came a lot of dying plants, a lot of pest issues. So the collection was kind of turning over at a funny rate, that I was buying new plants, but also plants were dying as well. So it never got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm at capacity. But as I got better at caring for plants, obviously they all kept surviving and thriving and getting bigger, and that's what happens with plants. They grow and they take up more space. So I got to a stage where I'm like, okay, I have a hell of a lot of plants, they're all doing really well, and I don't want to get rid of any that are doing well. Now, ironically, I think that this has actually massively coincided with some personal stuff that I was going through as well, in not being able to let go and kind of losing myself a little bit in the last couple of years. Nothing to go into detail with. I am in therapy and I'm all good, don't worry. But it's just funny how sometimes your approach in caring for your collection can actually reflect a lot of the things that are going on in your life at the time. So here we come to about a year ago, I started to get frustrated with my collection. If you've been on the channel for at least a year, you might have seen my videos around this time last year talking about how I had fallen out of love with my collection, and I did a kind of a series of videos on trying to get back into caring for plants again. And while that was successful, I still didn't fully tackle my issue of being able to let go of plants. But I'm happy to say that I've made very good progress on that recently, and I do think that that is to do with mental health and to do with just being really frustrated with the collection and just kind of being sick of a lot of plants, to be honest. So if you are in this same situation that I am in, I thought I would go through how I'm approaching it, and maybe this will help either kickstart you into doing so if that's something that you're looking at doing, maybe give a bit of inspiration or a kick up the butt, as we say here in Ireland, kick up the arse, to do this yourself. And honestly, I have already felt really positive effects from doing so, and it's made me actually really excited for this year of growing plants. I think when we're caring for our plants, you can often kind of select, or you just kind of know the ones that you don't really care about anymore. Ones that you don't like the look of, maybe your aesthetic has changed, maybe you thought you liked them before and you don't now. They can be quite obvious. But then there's ones that are not so obvious. So first things first is I set myself up mentally. Okay, I picked a day where I was feeling good. I was feeling like, okay, I want to accomplish this, put on a nice outfit, whatever gets you in the mood. Honestly, for me, as you can tell, comfy clothes, headphones, being in the zone, that's how I approached this initially. And it's also why I didn't film it as well, because I knew that I just needed to like focus, you know? And so I kind of did this shelf by shelf. I looked at each shelf and I looked at each plant, being very observant and kind of mindful and focusing on the plant itself and thinking about how I really felt about that plant. Now, I know this may sound a little bit airy-fairy and it's very much Marie Kondo, does it bring me joy kind of vibes, but honestly this is how I did it. I looked at each plant and I thought, do I love the way that looks? Yes or no? If I love the way it looks, do I actually enjoy caring for it? Is it difficult to care for? Does it cause me some stress? Is it something that I look forward to caring for? If it has a new leaf, do I get excited? If it flowers, do I get excited? Does this, you know, bring me happiness and joy in the hobby if I see this plant either having a new leaf or flowering or whatever, or seeing its progress? Am I proud of it? I asked myself all these questions honestly about every single plant, and I found that it was quite easy to reach a conclusion as long as I was in the right mindset and in tune with how I was feeling about each of the plants. And then I started culling a few, okay? Plants that were not doing well, root rot, recovering, that I wasn't arsed and actually taking care of anymore, straight to the compost, goodbye, okay? That was quite easy for me to do. I understand why it might not be for other people, but I threw a lot in the compost, a lot more than I had probably expected to. Any plants that were not of like a good, healthy level to be able to sell or give away all got composted very easily. Quite a lot of small plants that I was kind of holding on to for absolutely no reason, that weren't even growing, a lot of them were gone. The next thing, so that was easy, composting was easy. Then we got on to plants that, you know, are of a pretty healthy standard, you know. If it was a plant that I looked at and I thought, yes, I love this, but I have two of them. Big thing that I have gotten into was having multiples of each plant. Now, I never really have multiples of plants that are really difficult to care for. They're normally ones that do super well, and either they get too big and I split them, or I propagate them, have nowhere to put the propagation, and I just kept onto it and repotted it, and then gets born a new plant. So if it was one that I still really wanted to keep, I either kept one of them or I combined the two into one pot to create one giant plant. You know, one example of that I did with my Maranta Leucanura fascinator. I'll show you a clip of that right now. I had two pretty big plants of these, both doing super well, and I really love the look of this plant when it's full. So I decided to combine them into one bigger pot, and that has done really well, and I'm really happy with that decision. It's also actually saved me a lot of space because it's hanging up. I used to have one of them on a bottom shelf. That freed up a lot of space. Then there was plants that I actually have multiple of that I didn't want either. And one example of that, let me show you. And an example that has been growing massively successfully, my philodendron Hederaceum Brazil. This is massive. This is one of the two plants that I have. The other one is maybe not as full, but it's still quite as big. I just looked at this plant and I thought, I don't think I like it. I don't think I like the yellow variegation. I don't think I like the orange. Yes, it grows super successfully for me and it's really healthy and happy, but I honestly don't like the look of it anymore. And just being honest with myself about that and being like, it's okay to let go of this plant. I know it sounds really simple, but I genuinely had a lot of difficulty being able to do that. I find that once you get to make those decisions on a couple of plants, it gets easier. Doing the first couple is difficult, but it gets easier and you kind of get into a flow with it and you get more in tune to what you actually want to keep in your collection anymore. So that was one. I have a second one of those. Now personally, what I was doing with this, because I was on such a roll, I was actually putting the plants to give away or sell into a separate room so that they were, you know, they were out of the main collection. And then I could look at the ones that I put in that separate room. I send photos to friends and family and say, hey, do you want this plant? Do you not? If you don't want it, it will either be sold or composted. And there's some that I'm holding for people, there's some that I'm not, there's some that I'm still having difficulty throwing in the compost if it's doing well, but I'm making a list of plants to put up on Facebook or something to sell as well locally. Let me show you some other plants that I chose to make the cut. Let's show you an easy one. Now this has been sitting in the spare room for a couple of weeks now, so it is looking a lot worse than it was when I decided to get rid of it. For example, that is a leaf that has gone through root rot damage. Okay, this was overwatered big time. We got crispy leaves, we got it might be actually a good example to show you. That is what tends to happen. It looks like a burnt leaf, kind of. So we have root rot. Honestly, this one was easy for me. This is Philodendron species Fuzzy Petiole. When I originally bought this plant, it was labeled as a Philodendron nangartense, which is what I actually wanted, that has a different growth habit to this. And honestly, I can't stand that growth habit. I cannot. No thank you. There was nothing I could do, stake or not, to make this grow into a shape that I enjoyed. It's just so spindly. I have cut it back a million times. I've propagated it a million times. I have really tried with this plant to love it, and I just don't. So she gone. Probably it's a compost situation because it is doing pretty shittily. I could create a top cutting to sell. I don't need that on my plate. I have another good lot of healthy plants to sell as well. One that was maybe a bit more difficult because it wasn't struggling is Monstera species Peru. She is no longer going to be in my collection. Now, this was a bit more difficult because, like I said, it's actually very healthy and it grows very fast for me. We do have a yellow leaf there, but normal. Yeah, was doing really healthily, taking up a lot of space. I just looked at this and thought, I just don't care about it anymore. It doesn't bring me joy anymore. I'm not excited about it. I also find with this plant, the bigger it grew, the more it put out these long spindly vines looking for something to climb. I have staked it, I've wrapped it around the plant shelf legs to try and give it support, and it just created all these runners. Not for me, not a growth habit I really enjoy. So this is in the cut pile. Another one who has suffered being in the spare room, Scindapsus pictus exotica. Lots of yellow leaves there, lots of vines. Another viney grower, not for me, not happening. Like healthy at the top, I've just neglected it because it's been in a spare room. But it was doing really healthily, just don't care for it anymore. Yes, the leaves are beautiful, don't like the growth habit. When it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and I've cut this a lot in the last month or two as well, but it was bigger and it had a lot of leaves and whatever. I cared for it well, and I just don't care about it anymore. I hope you're following the theme of this. Just wanted to show some examples of why I reached that decision with certain plants. So there's a couple of examples there. Ones that weren't doing well, don't like the growth habits of. Ones that were doing well, just don't have joy for it anymore. Multiples of plants. There's a lot of different reasons. So my further approach with this is I kind of went through the entire collection and chose plants like that. Then I decided to kind of do this in phases, especially because it's difficult for me. I didn't want to overwhelm myself or feel that I was getting rid of way too many as well. So what I did was I did a first phase. That phase is now done. I've selected those plants. I've composted what I needed. I've separated ones to give away. I've separated ones to sell, etc., etc. So now we're at the second phase of this. So I've stayed with the plants that I've kept for a couple of weeks now. I did all of this over like the Christmas holidays, December holidays time, because I had a lot of time off and I spent a lot of time doing plant care, thinking about my collection and what I want my approach to be. And now I've stayed with these plants for a couple of weeks, and there's definitely some more that I have kind of pondered on. If there was ones I wasn't sure about, I was like, hey, I'll keep them for a couple of weeks and I'll wait for phase 2. Let's see if she makes it to phase 2. So I'm at phase 2 now, and I'm going to go through my collection and rethink about ones that maybe could also be gone. Let's show you an example. Let's show you an example of one I've already decided is going. And this might be upsetting for some of you if this has been a plant that you have wanted to have for a long time. This is my collection. Also, another thing I told myself, this is my collection. It's not for anyone else. It is a hobby of mine. It's to bring me joy. It's something that I, need to get enjoyment out of in my life. This is why I started this hobby. This is what brings me excitement. It's your collection. Nobody can tell you how to approach your collection. If you want to cut something or you don't like something, then you do it. And that is a real metaphor for your own life. I said it. Okay, I said it. It sounds crazy, but it is really true. If something doesn't serve you, it doesn't matter what other people say about it. It is your life and these are your decisions, and you can do whatever you want. This one will not make it to phase 2. This was a difficult decision, but it hasn't been moved out of the room yet, but it is there. Let me turn it. A gorgeous plant, sure. Begonia luxurians, a plant that I wanted for a long time, a plant that I've cared for a long time. I'm looking at it now and I'm even like, oh, will I keep it? It's so pretty. A plant that I can't care for pretty well, to be honest. One that was difficult for me, one that I learned a lot from, but also one that is quite stressful to take care of, I find. And also it can get really spindly. I don't know. It is really beautiful plant. You see, this is what happens in your head. But you know what? I haven't liked how this has looked for quite some time. No, it doesn't take up a lot of space, but it's not one that I love anymore. It's one that I feel like I've tackled. I was like, I should probably keep it until I can get it to flower and then I'll be satisfied. But honestly, I just don't think it has a place in my collection anymore, and that's fine. The older leaves always, have brown bits on the ends. It really does not do well with being dry for even like a period of 5 seconds. I'm trying to show you some examples of older leaves. So older leaves get brown edges whenever it gets dry, and that's inevitably going to happen with this plant because I cannot be on top of it 100% of the time, and that makes me like it less. There's also quite a bit of empty stem space down here. Just not a fan anymore, and that's okay. So this one will be sold for sure because this is a valuable plant, and well, they're all valuable, but it would be mad for me to just throw this in the bin. And I don't think there's anybody I personally know that would be able to care for this. I don't really have any close people in my life that care for difficult plants at all. So it's one to be sold, but yeah, that's one that's not going to make it through phase 2. So I hope that this has made a little bit of sense to you as to how I'm kind of approaching this refreshing of the collection. I hope I've kind of gathered my thoughts well enough. It is quite a personal thing, I feel, and a mental kind of battle or mental conversation that goes on there in how I've approached this. So I hope that I've been able to explain that to you, and I hope that it's helpful, or at least giving you some inspiration to tackle this in your own collection if it's something you've been struggling with. What I'm going to do right now, today, my plans for today is I'm actually going to go through my entire collection and make a list of spring chore things because it's coming to that time. This will be a separate video on what I'm doing to approach spring chores. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my collection section by section, shelf by shelf. I'm going to look at everything, write a list of what needs what. If somebody needs a stake or a repot or things like that, I'm going to make a list, but I'm also going to use that time to go through phase 2 of the what's the word for that? Phase 2 of the cull, let's call it, which is very extreme. But I'm going to be doing that as I approach it. So I will film a little bit of that, but yes. So that is it from me. I hope that this has given you some useful tips, or at least explained my approach. You can take it or leave it, or take some parts of it and leave other parts, whatever works for you. As somebody that struggled with this, I do encourage you to approach your collection with love and care and understanding of this being your hobby for you. And I can say, as coming out the other side of being in that kind of rut for so long, it feels really good, and it's made me feel really excited about my collection. So I do encourage you to do that, or just take little baby steps. You know, get rid of one, get rid of two, and just see how that goes and how that makes you feel. So I hope this has been useful. Thank you so much for watching. I do just want to give you guys a little preview of my Patreon page. For those of you that aren't aware or may be interested, I have a Patreon account. It is linked in the description of this video and also on the screen right here. And on Patreon, we have 3 tiers that you can sign up to. The prices are shown here. The species tier is just a little bit to give to support me every month, and it will get your name on the end card of any YouTube video on this main channel. At the genus and family tiers, what you get access to is a bonus video from me every month. Examples of what I put up there. They're more kind of relaxed videos. There's a lot of chores, a lot of plant updates. I have a day in the life of filming. They're generally a bit more personal, less formal, and less kind of planned out. If those are the videos that you like from me, you can find much more of it over on Patreon. If you sign up now, you'll get access to all the previous videos as well, so you can kind of binge watch them if that's something that you want to do. You will also get your name featured on the end card of every video at the genus and family tiers, and you will also be able to vote in patron only polls. I'll put up polls every now and again. It can be, what video would you like to see first? What do you think of this idea? I go there for video ideas a lot as well. So if you're interested in signing up to the Patreon, the link is here and in the description of the video. It's a great way to support me if you are able to, and if you're not, the videos will always be free on the main channel as well. But if you're looking for a little bit extra and you want to support me in doing this as a part-time job, that option is there for you. And thank you so much to my lovely patrons for supporting me this month. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you very soon in the next one.